Om apavitra pavitro va sarva avastang gatopi va yak smaret pundarika akshang sabhadhya abhyantara suchihi. Shri Vishnu, Shri Vishnu, Shri Vishnu. Either pure or impure, having passed through all conditions of material life, if one can remember the lotus-eyed Krishna, one becomes externally and internally clean. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, I was asked to speak today by our temple president. He humbly requested that I speak on two things. Since many of the children are graduating, then I will say something about the importance of education. And then the other item, obvious, Father's Day, which I will address from many different angles of vision. And especially I want to dedicate this class in memory of my dear friend, Jashpai Jaya Krishna Das Patel. Ever since I started coming to RadhaRaman Temple, perhaps as early as 1988, maybe earlier, Jai Krishna Das Jashbai was always very respectful, very humble, and very loving towards me. And it was an honor to be his friend, and after his departure, to be connected to his family. So I want to dedicate in the memory of Jai Krishna Das. I would ask everyone to repeat after me. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. First, on the topic of education, we get some important information from the EEsha Upanishad. Vyasadeva has compiled 108 Upanishads, 11 of which are most prominent, and one of those 11 is the EEsha Upanishad, which Prabhupada originally translated when he was still in India before coming to America. So there are two mantras that go together. Anyad evahur vidyaya, anyad ahur avidyaya, iti susrumadhiranam, yenastad vichachakshare. The wise have explained that one result is derived from the culture of knowledge, and that a different result is obtained from the culture of nescience. Nescience means ignorance. And we know from the Bhagavad Gita, everything in this material world can be categorized according to the modes of nature. All the different aspects of our life are governed, dictated, and we are judged by how we choose these modes of nature in our day-to-day activity. Next verse. vidyang cha yas tad vedo bayang saha avidyayam mrityum tirtva vidyayam ritam ashnute. Only one who can learn the process of nescience and that of transcendental knowledge side by side can transcend the influence of repeated birth and death and enjoy the full blessings of immortality. So here, this verse of Upanishad is pointing out that one should have a clear understanding of material knowledge, but that's not enough. You also have to know transcendental knowledge. As it says here, if you know the both processes, all the different aspects of material knowledge that is required to exist comfortably, but also the other side of the coin, you must know transcendental knowledge. And transcendental knowledge begins with the most famous book, Bhagavad Gita, as it is. In chapter 2, Krishna begins transcendental knowledge, explaining the difference between matter and spirit, between what is eternal, what is temporary, the difference between the body and the soul. So, I know from personal experience, having been associating, preaching primarily to Indian people since 1994, pretty much exclusively. And I've been to so many Indian houses all over the world, Sindhi houses, Gujarati houses, all South Indian, so many different. One thing I learned, the Indian parents, they stress education to their children. It is very, am I right? Yes? You stress it. It's very important. And yes, according to EEsha Upanishad, you should know. But the mistake many, not you, but many other people, they make the mistake, oh, I have given a good material education to my children, but the spiritual education, that's lacking. And Prabhupada specifically designed his ISKCON movement to provide that educational experience of transcendental knowledge. Beginning with Bhagavad Gita and going on to the postgraduate study, Srimad Bhagavatam. And you can go on beyond that to the postgraduate, Chaitanya Charitamrita. And you can go higher than that, the post, Brahma Samhita. So, parents, grandparents, I don't see any children. Anyway, we must at the same time encourage ourselves, because children see by you. If we tell the children, oh, you need to do this, but then the children say, yeah, but they're not doing what they told us to do. That's what we liked about Prabhupada. Everything Prabhupada was telling us, he was also doing. Prabhupada was rising early in the morning. He told us, rise 1.5 hours before sunrise. Prabhupada was doing that. We gladly followed because we had the example. In the beginning, Prabhupada taught the devotees everything. How to clean properly, how to bathe properly, how to cook nicely. And I might have mentioned there's one incident. Prabhupada showed a new girl how to wear a sari. So the guru knows everything. So yes, one should get a good material education. Why? Because you're not living as a sannyasi brahmachari. You're not living in an ashram. You're living in the real world. One has to know how to exist. And that requires a good education. But the other half of the parent's obligation, teach them transcendental knowledge. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna outlines 18 items of knowledge. 18. It's in the 13th chapter. Prabhupada, in the EEsha Upanishad purport, paraphrases it for easy, because EEsha Upanishad is like an introductory book. So Prabhupada explains things in EEsha Upanishad simply. Bhagavad Gita, little more. Bhagavatam, oh, now we're, and then Chaitanya Charitamrita, oh, you better know your stuff. There's different levels of how Prabhupada writes his books. The 18 items of knowledge, according to Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. One should become a perfect gentleman and learn to give proper respect to others. 2, one should not pose oneself as a religionist simply for name and fame. One should not become a source of anxiety to others by the actions of one's body, by the thoughts of one's mind, or by one's words. One should learn forbearance, even in the face of provocation from others. One should learn to avoid duplicity in one's dealings with others. One should search out a bona fide spiritual master who can lead one gradually to the stage of spiritual realization. And one must submit oneself to such a spiritual master, render him service, and ask relevant questions. In order to approach the platform of self-realization, one must follow the regulative principles enjoined in the revealed scriptures. One must be fixed in the tenets of the revealed scriptures. One should completely refrain from practices which are detrimental to the interest of self-realization. One should not accept more than one requires for the maintenance of the body. One should not falsely identify with the gross material body, nor should one consider those who related to his body to be his own. One should always remember that as long as one has a material body, one must face the miseries of repeated birth, old age, disease, and death. There is no use in making plans to get rid of these miseries, so the best course is to find out the means by which one may regain one's spiritual identity. One should not be attached to more than the necessities of life, which are required for spiritual advancement. One should not become more attached to wife, children, and home than what is ordained by the revealed scriptures. One should not be happy or distressed over desirables and undesirables, knowing that such feelings are just created by the mind. One should become an unalloyed devotee of the personality of Godhead, Bhagavan Sri Krishna, and serve Krishna with rapt attention. One should develop a liking for residence in a secluded place with a calm and quiet atmosphere favorable for spiritual culture. And one should avoid congested places where non-devotees congregate. And finally, one should become a scientist or philosopher and conduct research into spiritual knowledge, recognizing that spiritual knowledge is permanent, whereas material knowledge ends with the death of the body. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.